Welcome to a clinical examination of the nonconforming mind. Today's explainer is opening up a psychological dossier on a very specific and honestly kind of misunderstood type of person. We're talking about the individual who simply does not care about trends. You know the type, right? They don't copy what's popular and they literally never rush to fit in. We're going to look at the exact mental wiring that makes them this way, and trust me, it is absolutely fascinating. So here's the central mystery we're unpacking today. Why do some minds just effortlessly reject the crowd? Well, it turns out ignoring trends is not a social deficit. It's not about being out of touch. Actually, scratch that, it's more like a deliberate, highly functional psychological profile. It reveals exactly how a person's brain works, not just their personality. To really understand this, we need a bit of structure. Here's our agenda for today. 1. The trend-resistant mind. 2. Powered by internal validation. 3. The mechanics of deep thought. 4. Valuing function over image. And 5. The power of quiet observation. Let's get right into it. Section 1. The trend-resistant mind. A clinical examination of non-conformity. Okay, let's dive into this. To really get this mindset, we first have to look at the invisible force that governs almost everyone else. It's a foundational concept called normative social influence. Basically, it's that psychological pressure to conform. Buying that brand new gadget or wearing a specific brand purely out of a fear of being left out. Think of it like a law of social gravity. Most trends spread precisely because of this fear. But trend-resistant individuals, they're naturally immune to this gravitational pull. They are perfectly comfortable standing entirely alone because they simply don't feel that pressure. Section 2. Powered by internal validation. The internal compass of the independent thinker. If they aren't driven by the crowd, what exactly fuels them? Just look at the contrast here. On the left side, we have the exhausting megaphone of public approval, chasing social proof, likes, and that temporary high of fitting in. But on the right, we have the internal compass. Trend-resistant minds operate on this completely different fuel source. They depend on internal standards and a rock-solid self-concept. Their decisions, they come from the inside, not from whatever the crowd happens to be doing today. They do not need social proof to feel confident, because they know exactly who they are. A strong self-concept completely eliminates the urge to copy others. And this matters immensely. It means they don't feel lost when popular trends inevitably change. Their identity isn't tied to some social media algorithm. It's anchored to their own internal framework. Section 3. The mechanics of deep thought. The wiring of a deep processor. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is, it brings us to the actual wiring of their brain. Psychology tells us these individuals aren't just being stubborn for the sake of it. They rely on System 2 dominance. This is the cognitive ability to hit the brakes, pause, analyze, and reflect, instead of just reacting automatically to whatever is shoved in front of them. It's this specific psychological trait that makes them calmer and way more strategic. They absolutely refuse to rush decisions. Think about it. The trend-chasing world is like a lightning bolt, loud, fast-paced, built on automatic responses. But the deep thinker, they use a magnifying glass. They engage in slow thinking. They don't just blindly consume information. They decode it. They refine it. They're unraveling the world around them piece by piece. Part of that slow thinking involves a fascinating process known as counterfactual thinking. Instead of just accepting what is, they naturally engage in what-ifs. Now, to be clear, this is not just daydreaming. It's like a chess grandmaster simulating 10 moves ahead to predict consequences and build incredible insight. By exploring realities that haven't even happened yet, they're performing a highly advanced form of mental simulation that most people completely miss. And while they're simulating those outcomes, they are also doing this, associative integration. This is the ability to link concepts from completely different areas. It's exactly why they can effortlessly connect, say, a lesson from architecture to a complex problem in software design. They see these invisible bridges between ideas that look totally disconnected to the rest of us. It's the reason why, when you ask a deep thinker for advice, their answer often feels unusually accurate and just incredibly wise. Section 4. Valuing function over image. Protecting mental energy. And this brilliantly illustrates how all that internal processing translates to the real world. Look, when your brain is busy simulating realities and integrating complex concepts, you simply do not have the energy for superficial image. Notice their core priorities right here: usefulness, comfort, personal value. Keeping up with trends requires constant draining attention. Trend-independent people are highly selective with their mental energy. They invest it only in things that offer long-term value, rather than things designed just to generate short-term approval. Because of their strong critical reasoning, they don't look at a new product or behavior and ask, is this popular? Instead, they ask a much more powerful question. Does this make sense to me? They eagerly trade the anxiety of appearance and immediate attention for the quiet confidence of usefulness and long-term thinking. Section 5, the power of quiet observation. The quietest person in the room. Let's move to into how they actually operate socially. Because they're internally validated and process information so deeply, they are often the quietest person in the room. But pay close attention. They observe before they speak. While the loudest person is desperately trying to command attention, the quiet person's mind is actively decoding body language, noting tone changes, and identifying behavior patterns. They notice exactly what everyone else is too busy talking to see. And here is the clinical, almost tactical reality of the situation. Most people simply cannot handle silence. It makes them nervous, right? So what do? They overshare to fill the void, ultimately exposing their real intentions. Meanwhile, the quiet observer is like a radar, just staying calm, listening, and gathering immense tactical information without lifting a single finger. So the crucial point is, when they finally do activate that microphone and speak, they speak with absolute intention. Because they talk less, and because their words have gone through that rigorous System 2 deep processing we talked about earlier, their words carry incredible weight. Literally, just one sentence from them has the power to shift an entire conversation. But to maintain this level of sharp processing, they require what psychologists call cognitive quiet. Constant noise, social drama, and endless stimulation actively overwhelm their processing depth. I want you to really remember this. Their need for solitude is not isolation. It is not antisocial weakness. It is the necessary, vital environment for their mental machinery to function at its absolute peak. Quiet doesn't mean weak. It often means powerful. Let that sink in for a moment. This inner stability, this complete lack of need for external validation, makes a person mentally strong, emotionally controlled, and incredibly hard to manipulate or influence. They're anchored by their own mind, for sure, not by the shifting tides of the crowd. Which brings us to the end of our dossier today and leaves us with a critical question to ask ourselves. How much of your own mental energy is currently being spent chasing the crowd, instead of cultivating your own cognitive quiet? Are your decisions really coming from inside, or are you operating on that exhausting fuel of social proof? It's definitely something to think deeply about. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you next time as we continue to break down the fascinating mechanics of the world around us.